Billy Ward's heart raced as he stood before the Bajoran delegation, acutely aware that his next words could alter the course of interstellar relations. The 28-year-old human cultural liaison cleared his throat, preparing to address the elephant in the room. Bajoran females had never experienced Earth-style mating. The tension in the conference room was palpable. Ambassador Kira, a stern-faced Bajoran with ridged nose and earring glinting under the harsh lights, leaned forward. "Mr. Ward, perhaps you can explain why your species insists on this physical coupling for reproduction?" Billy shifted uncomfortably. He hadn't expected his role in the human-alien cultural exchange program to involve such intimate discussions. The United Earth government had sent him to smooth over cultural differences, not navigate the intricacies of interspecies sex education. "Well, Ambassador," Billy began, choosing his words carefully, "human reproduction involves a direct physical connection between—" A gasp from the Bajoran side of the table cut him off. Karina, a 25-year-old junior diplomat with striking blue eyes, looked both scandalized and intrigued. "You mean you actually join bodies?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Billy nodded, feeling sweat bead on his forehead. This was not how he'd envisioned this meeting going. He glanced at his human colleagues, noting their equally uncomfortable expressions. The recently signed trade agreement with Bajor hung in the balance, a crucial deal that would secure rare minerals for faster-than-light drive components. One wrong move and years of negotiation could unravel. Ambassador Kira's lips thinned into a disapproving line. "Our species has a complex ritual for reproduction, Mr. Ward. It involves no such primitive physical contact." Murmurs rippled through the Bajoran delegation. Billy could see curiosity blooming in their eyes, particularly among the younger members. Karina leaned towards her neighbor, whispering urgently. The human officials exchanged worried glances, no doubt imagining the potential for interspecies incidents. Taking a deep breath, Billy decided to take control of the situation. "Perhaps," he suggested, "I could organize an informational seminar on human biology and mating practices to foster better understanding between our species." The Bajoran ambassador considered this for a moment before nodding curtly. "Agreed, but I warn you, Mr. Ward, tread carefully. We wouldn't want this curiosity to jeopardize our agreement." As the meeting adjourned, Billy felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had to navigate this delicate situation while maintaining diplomatic protocol and preserving the crucial trade agreement. Little did he know, his seminar would spark a chain of events that would test the limits of human Bajoran relations and place him at the center of a potential interstellar crisis. Karina approached him as he gathered his materials. "Mr. Ward," she said, her voice low and intense, "I look forward to learning more about human mating practices. Perhaps we could discuss this further. In private?" Billy swallowed hard, suddenly aware that he was standing on the precipice of a diplomatic minefield. The fate of human Bajoran relations, and possibly the future of faster-than-light travel, now rested in his hands. And it all hinged on one unexpectedly provocative question. How do humans mate? Billy's mind raced as he watched Karina walk away, her last words echoing in his ears. He knew he had to tread carefully, but the weight of the situation was quickly becoming overwhelming. Over the next few days, Billy threw himself into preparations for the informational seminar, hoping to diffuse the tension that had arisen during the initial meeting. However, as he pored over his notes late one evening, his communicator buzzed with an urgent message from his superiors. "Ward, report to Conference Room Alpha immediately. Classified briefing." Heart pounding, Billy made his way through the dimly lit corridors of the diplomatic complex. As he entered the conference room, he was met by a panel of grim-faced officials from the United Earth government. "Mr. Ward," began the lead official, a stern-looking woman with graying hair, "the situation has escalated beyond our initial projections. The trade agreement is in jeopardy, and we need to take unconventional measures." Billy listened in stunned silence as they outlined their plan. A controlled cultural exchange between him and Karina, the curious Bajoran junior diplomat. The implications hit him like a shockwave. "You want me to mate with her?" Billy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not exactly," the official clarified, "but we need a controlled demonstration Dr. Elena Rodriguez will oversee the process to ensure safety and compatibility. As if on cue, a woman in her mid-30s with dark, intelligent eyes stepped forward. Mr. Ward, I'm Dr. Rodriguez. I'll be conducting thorough medical examinations on both you and Karina to mitigate any risks. Billy's head spun as he tried to process the information. But the cultural implications, the potential backlash, we're aware of the risks, the lead official cut in. But the stakes are too high. This trade agreement could revolutionize our faster-than-light capabilities. We need you to do this, Ward. In the days that followed, Billy found himself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Dr. Rodriguez's test revealed surprising similarities between human and Bajoran physiology, but also crucial differences that required careful consideration. Your circulatory systems are remarkably alike, Dr. Rodriguez explained during one of their sessions. But Bajoran hormonal responses are quite different. We'll need to monitor that closely. As word of the impending demonstration leaked, Billy watched helplessly as public opinion erupted into chaos. Human rights groups decried his involvement as exploitation, while conservative factions warned of genetic contamination. The Bajoran public seemed equally divided, with traditionalists opposing physical mating while a growing pro-contact movement gained traction. Amidst the turmoil, Billy found an unexpected ally in Dr. Rodriguez. Her calm professionalism and scientific approach helped ground him as the pressure mounted. Remember, Billy, she said during one of their preparation sessions, this is about fostering understanding between our species. Focus on the bigger picture. Meanwhile, Ambassador Kira attempted to quell the unrest by proposing a formal Bajoran ceremony to sanctify the potential union. This only seemed to complicate matters further, as human officials fretted over the legal and ethical implications. As the day of the demonstration approached, security around the facility tightened. Billy, outfitted in a specially designed protective suit, tried to calm his nerves as he waited in a sterile antechamber. Karina entered, her blue eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Mr. Ward, Billy, she said softly, I want you to know how much I appreciate your willingness to do this. It means so much for our people's understanding of each other. Billy managed a smile, touched by her sincerity. I feel the same way, Karina. Let's hope this brings our species closer together. As they prepared to enter the demonstration chamber, neither was aware of the multiple threats converging on their location. Marcus Steele and his human purist followers had infiltrated the security team, while an anonymous tip about their presence had sent the United Earth government into a panic. The chamber door slid open with a soft hiss. Billy took a deep breath, acutely aware that the next few moments could alter the course of human-Bajoran relations forever. He stepped forward, Karina at his side, into an uncertain future that would test the limits of interspecies understanding and cooperation. As Billy and Karina stood at the threshold of the demonstration chamber, the facility erupted into chaos. Alarms blared, their piercing wails echoing through the corridors. The door before them slid shut with a pneumatic hiss, cutting off their entry. What's happening? Karina shouted over the din, her blue eyes wide with alarm. Before Billy could respond, a group of security officers in tactical gear rounded the corner, weapons drawn. We're under attack, one of them yelled. Mr. Ward, Ms. Karina, we need to get you to safety. The officers surrounded them, creating a protective formation. As they moved through the corridors, Billy caught glimpses of the chaos unfolding. Staff members ran in panic, diplomats argued loudly, and the sound of gunfire echoed in the distance. Suddenly, a nearby explosion rocked the facility. The force of the blast separated Billy from Karina and their security detail. Smoke filled the air, obscuring his vision. Billy coughed, his protective suit now covered in debris. Karina, he called out, but received no response. Instinct took over. Billy's hand-to-hand combat training, a requirement for all cultural liaisons, kicked in as he encountered the first of Marcus Steele's purist followers. The attacker, dressed in a stolen security uniform, lunged at Billy with a stun baton. Billy ducked under the swing, using the attacker's momentum against him. With a quick series of strikes, he disarmed the man and left him unconscious on the floor. Billy grabbed the stun baton, knowing he'd need it to navigate the facility. As he fought his way through the corridors, Billy witnessed Karina's unexpected display of agility and strength. Through a shattered window, he saw her evade capture, her movements fluid and precise as she incapacitated two purist attackers. "Billy!" Dr. Elena Rodriguez's voice crackled through a nearby intercom. "Make your way to Lab 7. I have something that can help." Following her instructions, Billy arrived at the lab to find Dr. Rodriguez distributing small devices to a group of frantic staff members. "Experimental personal shields," she explained, handing one to Billy. "They're unstable, but they should provide some protection against the purest weapons." As Billy activated the shield, a faint blue shimmer enveloped his body. Dr. Rodriguez's communicator crackled to life with an urgent message. "Ambassador Kira has been injured in the crossfire. Repeat, Ambassador Kira is down." Billy's heart sank. The injury of a high-ranking Bajoran official could shatter the fragile diplomatic situation they'd worked so hard to build. "We need to find Karina and complete the demonstration," Billy said, his voice filled with willpower. "It might be the only way to salvage this situation." Dr. Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Lab 12 is secure and equipped for the procedure. If you can make it there, I'll guide you remotely." Billy set off, fighting his way through the chaos. He used his stun baton and personal shield to overcome several more purist attackers, each encounter leaving him more battered but resolute. Finally, he reached Lab 12, relief washing over him as he saw Karina already inside. She was breathing heavily, her clothing torn, but otherwise unharmed. "Billy," she exclaimed, rushing to embrace him. I feared the worst." As they held each other, the gravity of their situation became clear. The sounds of fighting drew closer, and the facility's power fluctuated ominously. "We have to do this now," Billy said, meeting Karina's gaze. "It might be our only chance to stop this madness." Karina nodded, her expression a mix of fear and willpower. "I'm ready." As they began the intimate process, guided remotely by Dr. Rodriguez's calm instructions, neither was prepared for what followed. The physical and emotional intensity of their encounter triggered an unexpected bioelectrical reaction. The air around them crackled with energy, and the lab's equipment sparked and sputtered. Outside the lab, Marcus Steele and his followers were closing in. But as they raised their weapons to breach the door, the energy emanating from Billy and Karina's union interfered with their equipment. Guns jammed, communication devices emitted only static, and their night vision goggles went dark. The bioelectrical field expanded, spreading throughout the facility. Security cameras flickered, door locks malfunctioned, and the entire complex was plunged into darkness. In this moment of silent darkness, the fighting stopped. Attackers and defenders alike paused, unsure of what was happening. When emergency power finally kicked in, casting the lab in a soft red glow, Billy and Karina stood together, changed. Karina's skin emitted a soft, bioluminescent glow, her eyes now a swirling mix of colors never before seen in a Bajoran. Billy, despite his protective suit, showed signs of subtle changes as well. His posture altered, his movements more fluid. As they emerged from the lab, their appearance caused all who saw them to stop and stare in awe. Human and Bajoran alike gazed at the transformed couple, a living symbol of the potential for unity between their species. Marcus Steele, his weapon useless at his feet, looked upon Billy and Karina with a mixture of shock and dawning realization. The futility of his cause became starkly apparent in the face of this unexpected outcome. As medical teams rushed towards them and diplomats began urgent discussions, Billy and Karina stood hand in hand, their transformation a silent testament to the unpredictable nature of interspecies relations. The facility buzzed with renewed activity, but for Billy and Karina, the world had changed in ways they were only beginning to understand. Comprehend. The facility hummed with renewed activity, but for Billy and Karina, everything had changed in ways they were only beginning to understand. Their moment of shared transformation was shattered by the sudden appearance of a team in hazmat suits. Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled through a speaker. "I'm sorry, but we need to quarantine you both immediately." Before they could protest, Billy and Karina were ushered into separate isolation chambers. Through the transparent walls, Billy watched as a flurry of activity erupted around them. Medical staff rushed back and forth, carrying equipment and shouting orders. Dr. Rodriguez approached Billy's chamber, her face etched with concern behind her protective visor. "We're declaring a state of emergency," she explained. "Your physiological changes are unprecedented. We need to run extensive tests." Days blurred together as Billy and Karina underwent a battery of examinations. Blood draws, tissue samples, and full-body scans became their new routine. Through it all, they could only communicate via video screens, their isolation complete. One morning, Billy awoke to find Dr. Rodriguez standing outside his chamber, accompanied by a stern-faced woman in a military uniform. "Mr. Ward, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," Dr. Rodriguez introduced. "She's here to discuss security measures." Commander Chen's voice was clipped and efficient. "Mr. Ward, we've implemented strict protocols for all Bajoran residents on Earth. It's for their protection, given the current climate." Billy's heart sank as he realized the implications. "You mean you've put them under house arrest?" Chen's expression remained impassive. "We prefer to call it protective custody." As if on cue, the facility's alarms blared. Chen's hand flew to her earpiece. "We've got protesters at the main gate, pro-contact groups clashing with segregationists." Through his chamber's window, Billy caught a glimpse of the chaos outside. Crowds surged against the facility's gates, signs waving and voices raised in anger. Inside the lab, the atmosphere was equally charged. A group of Bajoran scientists had arrived, led by a striking woman with piercing eyes. Dr. Rodriguez made the introductions. "Billy, this is Dr. Nala Jen, lead geneticist from Bajor," she said. "She'll be joining our research team." Dr. Jen's gaze swept over Billy, her expression a mix of fascination and concern. "Mr. Ward, your transformation is remarkable. The activation of dormant genes in your Bajoran counterpart has led to enhanced sensory perception and physical strength. And your cellular structure is incorporating Bajoran DNA." Billy's mind reeled at the implications. What does this mean for us, for relations between our species? Before Dr. Jen could answer, a commotion erupted in the lab. A group of security officers entered, escorting a familiar face, Marcus Steele. "What's he doing here?" Billy demanded, pressing against the glass of his chamber. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. "We've detected genetic changes in Mr. Steele as well. It seems prolonged exposure to the bioelectrical field generated during your encounter has affected him." Steele's eyes met Billy's, a mixture of fear and awe replacing his former hatred. The man who had once sought to keep their species apart was now irrevocably changed by their union. As the days passed, Billy noticed his body continuing to change. His movements became more fluid, his reflexes sharper. During one of their video calls, Karina revealed that her skin now glowed more intensely when they spoke. Dr. Rodriguez confirmed their suspicions. "Your transformations aren't stabilizing," she explained, her voice tense. "They're evolving at an accelerated rate. We're not sure where this will lead." The news sent shockwaves through the human and Bajoran governments. Debates raged about the next steps. Should the transformations be allowed to continue? Could they be reversed? The fate of Billy and Karina hung in the balance. Late one night, as Billy lay awake in his chamber, he heard a commotion in the hallway. Alarms blared, and he could make out shouts and the sound of breaking glass. Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom, panicked. "Billy, Karina, stay calm. We have intruders in the facility. They're calling themselves the Terran Evolution Movement. They're trying to—" Her voice cut off abruptly. Billy pressed against the glass, straining to see what was happening. In the corridor, he glimpsed a group of figures in dark clothing, moving with purpose. The leader of the group appeared in front of Billy's chamber, a determined glint in his eye. "We're here to liberate you," he announced. "You're the key to advancing both our species." As the intruder began to override the chamber's lock, Billy's mind raced. He knew that whatever happened next would shape the future of human-Bajoran relations, and potentially alter the course of both species' evolution. The chamber door slid open with a hiss, and Billy stepped out into a world of uncertainty. The facility was in chaos, alarms blaring and staff scrambling. He locked eyes with Karina across the room, her skin pulsing with a brilliant blue glow. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Billy stepped out of the chamber, his heart racing as he took in the chaos around him. The facility was in turmoil, alarms blaring and staff rushing in all directions. He locked eyes with Karina across the room, her skin pulsing with an intense blue glow that seemed to intensify as their gazes met. Before he could move towards her, a group of dark-clad figures burst into the room. Their leader, a man with fierce drive in his eyes, shouted over the din, "We're the Terran Evolution Movement. We're here to free you." Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the intercom, her tone urgent. "Billy, Karina, stay where you are. These people don't understand the danger." Her words were cut off as one of the intruders smashed the speaker. Jake Hawkins, the group's leader, approached Billy with outstretched hands. "You're the key to advancing both our species. Come with us." Billy hesitated, his enhanced senses picking up the subtle changes in the air around him. He could feel the bioelectrical energy emanating from his own body, interacting with the environment in ways he didn't fully understand. Suddenly, the facility's security systems kicked into overdrive. Blast doors slammed shut, sealing off sections of the complex. Dr. Rodriguez had initiated emergency protocols, attempting to isolate Billy and Karina from the intruders. Jake and his team produced devices from their pockets, tapping furiously on the screens. The blast doors began to malfunction, opening and closing erratically. Their hacking skills were formidable, bypassing layers of security with alarming speed. Outside the facility, chaos reigned. Commander Sarah Chen's voice echoed through the corridors as she coordinated her response team. "All units, converge on the central lab. Protect the subjects at all costs." But Chen's team faced unexpected resistance. A crowd had gathered outside, drawn by news of the break-in. Pro-evolution sympathizers clashed with security forces, creating a human barrier that slowed the response. Inside, Dr. Nala Jen worked feverishly at her console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Their genetic structures are destabilizing," she called out to her team. "If we don't contain them now, the mutations could accelerate beyond our control." Billy could feel the truth of her words in his changing body. His movements were becoming more fluid, almost alien. He glanced at Karina, seeing the fear and wonder mingled in her eyes as her skin pulsed with increasingly vibrant patterns. Jake Hawkins and his team pressed forward, using non-lethal but highly effective stun weapons to subdue the facility's security personnel. They were closing in on the central lab where Billy and Karina stood. In a moment of shared understanding, Billy and Karina locked eyes. Without a word, they moved in unison, using their newfound abilities to reinforce the lab's defenses. Billy's hands sparked with bioelectrical energy as he interfaced with the security systems, while Karina's bioluminescence intensified, creating a dazzling barrier of light. The activists hesitated as they reached the lab entrance, momentarily blinded by the display. Dr. Rodriguez seized the opportunity, initiating a controlled release of the bioelectrical field generated by Billy and Karina. The effect was immediate and shocking. The activists closest to the door began to change before their eyes. Their skin rippled, eyes shifting color, limbs contorting in unpredictable ways. Panic spread through their ranks as they realized the consequences of their actions. Jake Hawkins stared at his mutating hands in horror. "What have we done?" he whispered, his voice cracking. Outside, a new complication arose. Ambassador Kira's call for help had been answered. Bajoran peacekeepers arrived, their sleek ships descending through Earth's atmosphere. They clashed immediately with Earth's security forces, each side claiming jurisdiction over the facility. Commander Chen's voice crackled over the communication systems, strained and frustrated. "Stand down! This is an Earth matter!" The Bajoran commander's response was equally forceful. "This involves our citizens. We have a right to intervene." As the situation spiraled further out of control, Marcus Steele was brought to the command center. His eyes gleamed with a new intensity, his posture subtly altered by his own mutations. "I can help," he offered, his voice carrying a new note of humility. "I understand them. Let me try to talk them down." Commander Chen hesitated, weighing her options. With a curt nod, she agreed. "Do it, but one wrong move and you're back in custody." As Steele was escorted towards the central lab, a new alarm blared. Dr. Rodriguez's face appeared on screens throughout the facility, her expression grave. We've detected unidentified ships approaching Earth at high speed. Their trajectory suggests they're heading straight for us. The news sent a fresh wave of panic through the facility. Human and Bajoran forces alike looked to the sky, wondering what new threat was bearing down upon them. Inside the central lab, Billy and Karina stood at the eye of the storm. Their bodies continued to change, evolving in ways that defied understanding. As the chaos swirled around them, activists in turmoil, security forces in conflict, and unknown ships approaching, they reached for each other's hands. In that touch, a surge of energy passed between them. For a moment, the facility's lights flickered, and every electronic device within range emitted a burst of static. As the energy subsided, Billy and Karina looked at each other with new understanding in their eyes. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The fate of two species, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. As Billy and Karina's hands touched, a surge of energy unlike anything they had experienced before coursed through their bodies. The air crackled with electricity, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, without warning, a massive pulse of bioelectrical energy erupted from the couple, radiating outward in a brilliant, blinding wave. The facility's lights flickered and died, plunging everything into darkness. Electronic devices sputtered and went silent. The shouts of activists and security forces alike were cut short as the energy wave washed over them, rendering everyone in its path unconscious. In the sudden silence, Billy and Karina found themselves standing alone in the darkness, their skin glowing faintly with residual energy. Their enhanced senses kicked into overdrive, allowing them to perceive their surroundings with startling clarity despite the lack of light. "We need to move," Billy whispered, his voice barely audible. Karina nodded, her luminescent skin pulsing in agreement. Hand in hand, they navigated through the maze of corridors, stepping over the unconscious forms of guards and activists. Their movements were fluid and coordinated, as if they shared a single mind. They instinctively knew which way to turn, avoiding obstacles and potential dangers with ease. As they approached the stairwell, Billy's heightened hearing picked up the faint sound of familiar voices above them. "Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Jen," he murmured to Karina. "They're on the roof." They ascended the stairs swiftly, emerging onto the facility's roof. The night air was cool against their skin, a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere inside. They found Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Jen huddled over a makeshift command center, frantically trying to restore power to their equipment. Dr. Rodriguez looked up, her eyes widening as she saw Billy and Karina. "You're here," she breathed, relief evident in her voice. "We've lost all contact with the outside world. The energy surge, it knocked out everything." Dr. Jen stepped forward, her gaze fixed on the transformed couple. "Your genetic structures are continuing to evolve at an unprecedented rate," she said, her voice a mix of concern and fascination. "We need to get you to a secure location where we can continue our research." Billy tensed, ready to argue, but Dr. Rodriguez raised a hand to calm him. "We're not trying to contain you," she explained quickly. "We want to help you understand what's happening to you both. And we believe you might be the key to preventing a larger crisis." Before Billy or Karina could respond, Dr. Jen produced a small, disc-shaped device from her pocket. "This is an experimental teleportation device," she explained. "We developed it for emergencies like this. It can transport us to a secret underground facility where we can continue our work safely." Billy and Karina exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. After a moment, they nodded in unison. "Okay," Billy said, "let's go." Dr. Rodriguez activated the device and a shimmering field of energy enveloped the group. In an instant, the world around them dissolved into a blur of light and color. When the sensation passed, they found themselves in a vast, high-tech laboratory hidden deep underground. As the group oriented themselves to their new surroundings, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Unidentified ships entering Earth's atmosphere," she announced, her voice tense. "They're heading straight for us." The main screen lit up, showing a fleet of sleek alien vessels descending through the clouds. Their design was unlike anything human or Bajoran, with smooth lines and an almost organic appearance. "Vulcans?" Dr. Jen gasped, recognizing the ships. "But why are they here?" Before anyone could speculate further, a new alert flashed across the screen. Reports were pouring in from around the globe of sporadic mutations occurring in individuals who had been near the medical facility during Billy and Karina's escape. The genetic changes were less pronounced, but undeniably similar to what Billy and Karina had experienced. "It's spreading," Dr. Rodriguez whispered, her face pale. "The bioelectrical field you generated, it must have triggered latent genetic potential in others." As the implications of this news sank in, Billy felt a strange sensation wash over him. His perception seemed to expand, allowing him to sense the subtle genetic changes occurring in people miles away. Beside him, Karina's skin pulsed with intricate patterns, her eyes glowing with an inner light. "We can feel them," Karina said, her voice resonating with a new depth. "All the people who are changing. They're scared, confused, but also excited. They feel like they're evolving into something new." Dr. Jen's eyes widened as she studied the data streaming across her screens. "These mutations, they're not random," she realized. "There's a pattern here, a direction. It's as if your genetic code is trying to achieve a specific outcome." As the scientists worked feverishly to understand the rapidly unfolding situation, Billy and Karina stood at the center of the lab, their bodies continuing to change in subtle ways. They could sense the world around them with increasing clarity, feeling the ebb and flow of energy through the Earth itself. Outside, the Vulcan ships made their final approach, bringing with them the promise of advanced scientific knowledge and a potential solution to the growing crisis. But as Billy and Karina's awareness expanded, they realized that the true test was just beginning. The future of human-Bajoran relations, and perhaps the very nature of both species, hung in the balance, with them at the center of it all. The sudden appearance of the Vulcan ships brought a momentary pause to the chaos unfolding on Earth. Billy and Karina, still reeling from their shared energy surge, stood at the center of the underground laboratory, their bodies thrumming with newfound power. Dr. Rodriguez turned away from the console, her expression a mix of concern and persistence. "We need to stabilize your conditions," she said, gesturing for Billy and Karina to follow her to a nearby examination area. "The mutations are progressing faster than we anticipated." As they moved, Billy noticed his steps were lighter, almost fluid. He glanced at Karina, seeing the same graceful motion in her movements. Their eyes met, and he felt a spark of connection that went beyond the physical. Dr. Jen began scanning their bodies with advanced medical equipment, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The genetic changes are accelerating," she muttered, eyes flicking between the couple and her instruments. "It's as if your DNA is rewriting itself in real time." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Rodriguez rushed back to the main console, her fingers flying over the controls. "Multiple breach attempts detected," she announced, her voice tight with tension. "It's the evolutionaries. They're trying to force their way in." Billy felt a surge of panic, not just his own but Karina's as well. Their emotions seemed to flow between them, amplifying and merging. He reached for her hand instinctively, and as their fingers intertwined, a burst of bioelectrical energy pulsed through the room. The lights flickered, and several nearby monitors crackled with static. Dr. Jen stumbled back, her eyes wide. "Incredible," she breathed. "Your bioelectrical fields are synchronizing." Before anyone could react further, a holographic projection materialized in the center of the lab. Commander Sarah Chen's face appeared, her expression grim. "Dr. Rodriguez, we have a situation," she said. "The mutations are spreading faster than we can contain them. We're implementing global quarantine protocols, but civil unrest is growing." As Chen spoke, Billy became aware of a strange sensation at the edge of his consciousness. It was as if he could feel the fear and confusion of countless others, their emotions washing over him in waves. Beside him, Karina shivered, her skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. "We can sense them," Karina whispered, her voice trembling. "All the people who are changing. They're scared, angry. Some of them are in pain." Dr. Rodriguez turned to them, her face pale. "This is beyond anything we've prepared for," she said. "We need help." As if in answer to her words, another holographic projection appeared. This time, it was Ambassador T'Pol of Vulcan, her serene features a stark contrast to the chaos unfolding around them. "Greetings," T'Pol said, her voice calm and measured. "We have been monitoring the situation on Earth. We propose a solution that may help contain and study these mutations in a controlled environment." As T'Pol outlined her plan for a Vulcan-designed facility to study voluntary human-Bajoran pairings, Billy felt a mix of hope and apprehension. The idea of being studied, of potentially being separated from Karina, filled him with dread. Yet he could sense the logic behind the proposal, the potential for understanding what was happening to them. Dr. Rodriguez listened intently, her expression shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism. "It's a bold plan," she said finally, "but it might be our best chance at getting ahead of this crisis." As the discussions continued, Billy became aware of a growing pressure in his head. The bioelectrical field generated by his and Karina's evolving physiology was intensifying, interfering with the bunker's shielding systems. Sparks began to dance across nearby equipment, and the air grew thick with ozone. Dr. Jen noticed the disturbance, her eyes widening in alarm. "The shielding is failing," she exclaimed. "If we don't stabilize it soon, our location will be exposed." Billy looked at Karina, seeing his own fear reflected in her eyes. They both knew what this meant. The evolutionaries would be able to find them, and if Jake Hawkins and his followers got their hands on them, there was no telling what might happen. As if on cue, a loud explosion rocked the facility. Alarms blared anew, and the holographic projections flickered and died. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to the security feed, her face paling at what she saw. "They're here," she said, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "The evolutionaries have breached the outer defenses." In that moment, Billy knew they were out of time. He turned to Karina, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. As the sounds of battle drew closer, they braced themselves for the confrontation to come, their bodies humming with untapped power, and the weight of two species' futures resting squarely on their shoulders. Shoulders. The sound of gunfire and shouting grew louder, echoing through the corridors of the underground facility. Suddenly, the sealed doors of the laboratory burst open. Ambassador Kira's extraction team poured in, their weapons at the ready. "We need to move now," the team leader shouted, gesturing urgently towards Billy and Karina. Dr. Rodriguez nodded, quickly gathering crucial data tablets. "This way," she directed, leading the group towards a hidden exit. As they rushed through the winding corridors, Billy felt his body humming with energy. Each step sent sparks dancing across the metal floors, and he could sense Karina's matching energy beside him. Their hands found each other instinctively, fingers intertwining as they ran. The team emerged into a cavernous hangar where a sleek transport vehicle waited. Its hull gleamed with an otherworldly sheen, clearly enhanced with Vulcan technology. "Inside, quickly!" the team leader urged, ushering Billy and Karina into the specially designed compartment. As Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Jen clambered aboard with their research materials, the sound of explosions rocked the facility. Through the closing doors, Billy caught a glimpse of Jake Hawkins leading a group of partially mutated individuals. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and their movements were unnaturally fluid and powerful. The transport's engines roared to life, and they shot out of the hangar into the crisp night air. Billy pressed his face to the window, watching as the mountain that had hidden their underground sanctuary rapidly shrank behind them. Their moment of relief was short-lived. A series of loud thuds on the roof signaled that they weren't alone. "Evolutionaries!" Dr. Jen exclaimed, her eyes wide with fear as she checked the external cameras. Billy watched in horrified fascination as partially mutated humans leapt impossible distances, latching onto the speeding vehicle with inhuman strength. Their fingers dug into the metal, leaving deep gouges as they tried to tear their way inside. The transport swerved sharply, taking a winding mountain road at breakneck speed. Billy and Karina were thrown against each other, and a surge of bioelectrical energy pulsed through the compartment. The lights flickered, and several monitoring devices sparked and died. "The shielding is failing!" Dr. Rodriguez shouted over the chaos, her fingers flying over a control panel. "Your combined energy output is too strong." Billy felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. His skin tingled, and he could sense his body changing at a molecular level. Beside him, Karina's luminescent patterns swirled and shifted with increasing speed. Through the windshield, Billy saw sleek hovercrafts descending from the sky, engaging the pursuing evolutionaries with bursts of non-lethal energy. The aerial battle was a blur of light and motion, with partially mutated humans displaying feats of agility that defied belief. A particularly violent swerve sent everyone tumbling. As Billy helped Karina to her feet, he felt a surge of connection stronger than ever before. For a moment, it was as if they shared a single consciousness, their thoughts and emotions perfectly aligned. The moment was shattered by the sound of tearing metal. Jake Hawkins had reached the transport, his mutated hands ripping through the reinforced roof like it was paper. His face appeared in the jagged opening, eyes wild with a mix of triumph and desperation. "You can't stop evolution!" Jake roared, reaching for Billy and Karina. Suddenly, a blinding light engulfed the entire vehicle. Billy felt a strange sensation, as if every atom in his body was being pulled apart and reassembled. The world around him dissolved into pure energy. When his vision cleared, Billy found himself in a vast, ethereal space. Karina stood beside him, her skin pulsing with intricate patterns of light. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Jen were there too, looking dazed and disoriented. And to Billy's shock, so was Jake Hawkins, his partially mutated form frozen in a posture of confusion and anger. Before any of them could speak, a melodious voice resonated through the space. "Welcome," it said, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "The next stage of evolution awaits." As the voice faded, Billy became aware of a vast presence surrounding them. Whatever had brought them here, whatever force was guiding the mutations that had changed his life, it was far beyond anything he had imagined. And as he stood there, hand in hand with Karina, he knew that the true journey was only just beginning. A surge of energy coursed through Billy and Karina, and the ethereal space around them shimmered and dissolved. They found themselves back in the transport vehicle, but everything had changed. The damaged roof was intact, and Jake Hawkins was nowhere to be seen. Dr. Rodriguez and Dr. Jen blinked in confusion, their expressions mirroring the disorientation Billy felt. Outside, the aerial battle had ceased, replaced by the serene backdrop of a starlit sky. "What just happened?" Karina whispered, her skin still pulsing with fading bioluminescence. Before anyone could answer, the transport's communication system crackled to life. Commander Sarah Chen's voice filled the compartment, steady and authoritative. "Dr. Rodriguez, we've secured your team. Prepare for immediate transfer to the Vulcan facility." As the transport changed course, Billy's mind raced. The voice they had heard, the presence they had felt. It was clear now that something far beyond their understanding was at work. He glanced at Karina, seeing the same mix of excitement and apprehension in her eyes. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical examinations and debriefings. The Vulcan facility was a marvel of efficiency and advanced technology. Billy watched in awe as Dr. T-Lar, a Vulcan scientist with piercing eyes and an air of quiet authority, oversaw their intake process. "Your genetic profiles are fascinating," Dr. T-Lar remarked, studying a holographic display of Billy and Karina's DNA. "The mutations are progressing at an unprecedented rate, yet they appear to be following a specific pattern." As days turned into weeks, Billy and Karina found themselves at the center of an intensifying global phenomenon. Reports flooded in from around the world of more individuals experiencing controlled mutations. The facility became a hub of activity, with volunteers arriving in droves, seeking answers and guidance. One morning, as Billy and Karina were undergoing another series of tests, Commander Chen entered the lab, her expression grave. "We've received new orders," she announced. "We're assembling an expedition team to investigate the coordinates provided by the alien race. You two are coming with us." The following days were a whirlwind of preparation. Billy watched in amazement as the USS Horizon, a sleek starship of human Bajoran design, was unveiled. As they boarded the vessel, he felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. This journey would take them far beyond the familiar confines of Earth, into the unknown reaches of space. As the USS Horizon prepared for departure, an unexpected commotion erupted on the bridge. Security officers dragged in a man who had somehow managed to sneak aboard. Billy recognized him instantly. Marcus Steele, a former colleague whose subtle mutations had granted him enhanced stealth abilities. Commander Chen studied Marcus intently before making a surprising decision. "Your skills could be valuable on this mission, Mr. Steele. You'll remain with the team, but under close supervision." The launch was smooth, the advanced Vulcan technology integrated into the ship's systems, performing flawlessly. As Earth receded from view, Billy felt a strange mix of emotions: excitement for the journey ahead, concern for those left behind, and a growing sense that they were on the cusp of something monumental. Their first major challenge came when the USS Horizon entered an uncharted region of space, filled with intense radiation. The ship's shields struggled against the onslaught, alarms blaring throughout the vessel. "We need to find shelter," Commander Chen ordered, her voice calm despite the chaos. "Scan for any habitable bodies nearby." Fortune smiled upon them as they detected a small planetoid within range. As they descended through its thin atmosphere, Billy gasped at the sight below. The barren surface was dotted with structures, ancient ruins of an unknown civilization. Ambassador Kira, who had been quietly observing until now, leaned forward, her eyes wide. "Those structures," she breathed, "they bear a striking resemblance to early Bajoran architecture." As the team set foot on the planetoid's surface, Billy felt a strange resonance within him. The ruins seemed to pulse with a faint energy, barely perceptible, yet undeniably present. Karina gripped his hand, her skin flickering with bioluminescent patterns. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Billy nodded, words failing him as they ventured deeper into the alien city. Their exploration led them to a hidden chamber, its walls covered in intricate symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. In the center stood a dormant device, unlike anything they had ever seen. Marcus Steele, his enhanced senses on high alert, approached the device cautiously. "There's a pattern here," he murmured, his fingers tracing invisible lines in the air. I think I can activate it." As Marcus manipulated unseen controls, the device hummed to life. A holographic projection filled the chamber, and Billy felt his heart skip a beat. There, before their eyes, were images of himself and Karina, along with the other abductees, undergoing a controlled evolution process. A melodious voice, hauntingly familiar, resonated through the chamber. "We are the progenitors," it said. "For millennia, we have guided the evolution of both humans and Bajorans. The time has come for the next stage of your journey." The projection shifted, showing a massive structure materializing in space, a gateway to the next stage of evolution. As the hologram faded, Billy and Karina exchanged glances, the weight of their responsibility settling heavily upon them. Commander Chen's voice cut through the silence. "We have our heading," she said firmly. "Let's get back to the ship. Our real mission is just beginning." As they made their way back to the USS Horizon, Billy's mind raced with questions. What awaited them beyond that gateway? What plans did the progenitors have for humanity and the Bajorans? And most importantly, were they ready for whatever challenges lay ahead? The ship's engines roared to life, lifting them off the ancient planetoid's surface. As they set course for the coordinates of the mysterious gateway, Billy gazed out at the star-filled expanse. Whatever the future held, he knew that he and Karina would face it together, carrying the hopes and fears of two species with them into the unknown. Unknown as they accelerated towards the mysterious coordinates, little did they know that their journey was about to take an unexpected turn. As the USS Horizon approached the massive gateway structure, the ship's systems began to malfunction. Warning alarms blared throughout the vessel, and the bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. "Report!" Commander Chen barked, her fingers gripping the arms of her chair. Lieutenant Vorek, the Vulcan helmsman, spoke with his characteristic calm. "An intense energy field is emanating from the alien construct, Commander. It's interfering with our primary systems." The ship lurched violently, throwing several crew members off balance. Sparks flew from nearby consoles as the energy field intensified. "Initiate emergency protocols," Chen ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Engage backup power systems. Prioritize life support and essential functions." Billy and Karina exchanged worried glances as the crew scrambled to carry out the commander's orders. The ship's erratic behavior worsened, and Chen made a difficult decision. "We can't maintain orbit," she announced. "Prepare for emergency landing procedures. There's a sizable asteroid nearby with a breathable atmosphere. It's our best option." The next few minutes were a blur of motion and sound as the USS Horizon descended towards the asteroid's surface. The ship shuddered and groaned under the strain of re-entry, its hull glowing red-hot from the friction. With a bone-jarring impact, the Horizon touched down on the asteroid's surface, skidding across the rocky terrain before coming to a stop. As the dust settled, an eerie silence fell over the ship. Commander Chen's voice crackled over the intercom. "All hands, report to your emergency stations. Damage assessment teams, begin your sweeps." Billy, Karina, and the rest of the expedition team gathered in the ship's main airlock. As they donned their environmental suits, Dr. Tilar approached with a handheld scanner. "Fascinating," she murmured, her eyebrow raised in that distinctly Vulcan expression of intrigue. "This asteroid appears to be artificial in nature. The atmosphere is indeed breathable, and I'm detecting significant energy readings beneath the surface." As the airlock cycled open, the team stepped out onto the asteroid's surface. What they saw left them speechless. Instead of a barren, rocky wasteland, they found themselves standing at the edge of a vast, otherworldly city. Towering structures of an unfamiliar, iridescent material stretched as far as the eye could see, pulsing with an inner light. "This is no asteroid," Ambassador Kira breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's an outpost." Before anyone could respond, a figure emerged from one of the nearby structures. Tall and slender, with skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, the alien approached the group with graceful steps. "Welcome," the alien said, her voice melodious and echoing slightly in their minds. "I am Zara, and this is our staging ground for the grand experiment in guided evolution." Billy felt a surge of excitement and apprehension. "The progenitors?" he said, realizing who they were facing. Zara nodded, her luminescent eyes fixed on Billy and Karina. "You two are at the center of it all. Come. There is much to show you." As they followed Zara through the alien city, Marcus Steele suddenly tensed. His enhanced senses picked up on something familiar. "Commander," he said, his voice low and urgent, "I think I've detected Jake Hawkins nearby." Chen nodded, her expression grim. "Take a small team and investigate, but be cautious." While Marcus led a group to explore his discovery, Zara guided the others to a vast, dome-like structure at the city's center. Inside, they found rows upon rows of stasis pods, each containing a human or Bajoran in various stages of mutation. "This is where the final stages of transformation take place," Zara explained. She led them to two empty pods near the center of the room. "These are for you, Billy and Karina. Your journey is nearly complete." As Billy and Karina exchanged nervous glances, Ambassador Kira and Dr. Taylor began examining the nearby consoles, their eyes widening as they deciphered the alien technology. "Commander," Taylor called out, her usual Vulcan composure slightly shaken. "These records indicate that the progenitors visited both Earth and Bajor in ancient times. They left behind genetic markers that would eventually lead to this evolutionary leap." Meanwhile, Commander Chen worked with the ship's engineer to adapt Dr. Alara Voss's mutation stabilization device. As they integrated it with the progenitor technology, new insights into the evolution process began to emerge. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Zara's expression turned grave. "We have a problem," she announced. "A group of rogue progenitors is approaching. They oppose our intervention in other species development and seek to destroy this outpost." Commander Chen's training kicked in immediately. "We need to prepare for an attack. Ambassador Kira established communication with Earth and Bajor. They need to know what's happening here." As the expedition team scrambled to fortify their position, Billy and Karina exchanged a meaningful look. They knew that the time had come for them to embrace their new roles fully. Hand in hand, they stepped towards the waiting stasis pods, ready to complete their transformation and face whatever challenges lay ahead. The air crackled with tension as the first signs of the approaching rogue progenitors appeared on the horizon. The USS Horizon's crew, alongside their newfound allies, prepared for a battle that would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of humanity and Bajoran civilization itself. The air crackled with tension as the first signs of the approaching rogue progenitors appeared on the horizon. Commander Chen's eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation, her mind already formulating a strategy. "All hands, battle stations," she barked into her communicator. "Initiate defense protocol Alpha 7. The crew of the USS Horizon sprang into action, their movements precise and purposeful, despite the looming threat. Chen turned to Billy and Karina, who stood nearby, their skins shimmering with newfound bioluminescence. "We need every advantage we can get," she said, her voice steady. "Are you ready to put your new abilities to the test?" Billy and Karina exchanged a glance, a silent conversation passing between them in an instant. They nodded in unison. "We're ready, Commander," Billy replied, his voice resonating with a strange harmonic quality. As Chen coordinated the defense efforts, Billy and Karina made their way to the outpost's central control hub. Their fingers danced across the alien interface, their minds melding seamlessly with the progenitor technology. A shimmering, translucent field began to form around the outpost, pulsing with bioelectrical energy. Outside, the first volley from the rogue progenitor ships lit up the sky. The energy weapons streaked towards the outpost, only to scatter and dissipate as they struck the newly formed barrier. "It's working!" Karina exclaimed, her eyes glowing with excitement and exertion. Ambassador Kira and Dr. Tilar worked alongside Zara, their fingers flying over consoles as they integrated the outpost's ancient defenses with the expedition's technology. The ground beneath their feet trembled as long-dormant weapon systems came to life. "Ambassador," Tilar called out, her voice tinged with urgency, "I'm detecting multiple breaches in the lower levels. We have intruders." Kira's face hardened. "We need reinforcements down there. But who?" His question was cut short as Marcus Steele's voice crackled over the comm system. "Commander Chen, I've located Jake Hawkins and the other evolutionaries, requesting permission to release them from stasis." A moment of tense silence followed before Chen's reply came through. "Granted, Mr. Steele, but keep them under close watch. We can't afford any internal conflicts right now." In the stasis chamber, Marcus worked quickly to revive Jake and the others. As the pod hissed open, Jake's eyes snapped open, confusion quickly giving way to alertness. "What's going on?" he demanded, his voice hoarse from disuse. Marcus helped him to his feet. "Short version? We're under attack by rogue progenitors. We need your help to defend the outpost." Jake's eyes narrowed, but he nodded. "My people?" "We're reviving them now," Marcus assured him. "But we need to move fast." Above, the battle intensified. The USS Horizon, battered but operational, took to the skies under Chen's command. Its weapons, now augmented by progenitor tech, lanced out at the enemy ships with unprecedented power. Inside the outpost, Billy and Karina's connection to the progenitor systems deepened. Through the facility's sensors, they perceived the battle in its entirety, a multi-dimensional chess game played out across space and time. "There!" Billy exclaimed, pointing to a holographic display. "Do you see it?" Karina nodded, understanding instantly. "A weakness in their shield matrix. If we can exploit it." They relayed the information to Commander Chen, who wasted no time in formulating a new attack plan. The Horizon banked sharply, leading a squadron of smaller craft piloted by the newly awakened evolutionaries. Jake Hawkins, strapped into the cockpit of a progenitor fighter, felt a thrill of excitement as he pushed the alien craft to its limits. The ship responded to his thoughts as much as his physical inputs, moving with a grace and speed that defied conventional physics. As the defenders pressed their advantage, the rogue progenitors unleashed a new weapon, a sickly green mist that seeped through the outpost shields. Alarms blared as the biological agent began to affect the evolved humans and Bajorans. In her lab, Dr. Tilar worked feverishly to modify Dr. Voss's stabilization device. "The mutagen is attempting to reverse the controlled evolution process," she reported, her voice strained. "I need more time to counteract it." A thunderous explosion rocked the facility. Marcus Steele's voice came over the comms, tight with tension. "We've got hostiles breaching the outer defenses, moving to intercept, but we could use backup." As chaos erupted throughout the outpost, Zara made a fateful decision. She activated an ancient communication array, sending out a distress call to other progenitor factions. "Help is coming," she announced, her luminescent eyes gleaming with persistence. "But we must hold out until it arrives." The battle raged on multiple fronts, in space where the Horizon and its allies exploited the weakness in the enemy ships, in the laboratories where Talar raced against time to stabilize the mutations, and in the corridors of the outpost, where Marcus and his team engaged in fierce close-quarters combat with the invading forces. Through it all, Billy and Karina remained at the heart of the outpost. Their evolved minds interfaced directly with its systems. They channeled energy, redirected attacks, and coordinated defenses with an efficiency that bordered on precognition. As the tide of battle began to turn in their favor, a new threat emerged. The sensors detected a massive energy buildup in the largest of the rogue progenitor ships, a planet-killing weapon capable of obliterating the entire asteroid base. Commander Chen's voice rang out over the comms, steady despite the dire circumstances. "All personnel, prepare for immediate evacuation. We need to—" "Wait!" Billy interrupted, his eyes wide as he processed information streaming directly into his mind. "Karina and I might be able to stop it. We just need a little more time." Chen hesitated for a split second before responding. "Do what you can. Everyone else, continue evacuation procedures. We'll hold off as long as possible, but be ready to depart at a moment's notice." As the crew scrambled to their evacuation stations, Billy and Karina stood side by side in the control hub, their hands intertwined and their minds melded with the outpost systems. They reached out with their newfound abilities, probing the enemy weapon, searching for a way to disable it before it could fire. The fate of the expedition, the future of human Bajoran evolution, and perhaps the balance of power in the galaxy itself, now rested on their shoulders. As the energy readings from the planet killer reached critical levels, Billy and Karina pushed their abilities to the limit, racing against time to find a solution before it was too late. Too late. Billy and Karina's eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. They took a deep breath, their fingers intertwining as they connected more deeply with the outpost systems. Energy coursed through their bodies, their skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. They channeled every ounce of their newfound abilities into the outpost's central core, creating a massive surge of bioelectrical energy. The control room hummed with power, consoles flickering as the energy built to unprecedented levels. Commander Chen watched in awe as holographic displays showed the energy surge racing towards the approaching planet-killer weapon. "It's working!" Karina exclaimed, her voice strained with effort. The energy surge collided with the planet killer, overwhelming its systems. The massive weapon shuddered, its energy patterns destabilizing. For a moment, it seemed as if it might fire despite their efforts, but then the unthinkable happened. The planet killer imploded upon itself in a blinding flash of light and energy. The shock wave rippled through space, causing the outpost to shudder violently. Alarms blared as the implosion created a localized space-time distortion. Billy and Karina, still connected to the outpost systems, found themselves caught in the epicenter of the distortion. Their minds were suddenly flooded with visions of potential futures. They saw glimpses of a unified human Bajoran civilization spreading across the stars, facing incredible challenges and emerging stronger for it. As quickly as it began, the distortion subsided. Billy and Karina stumbled, overwhelmed by the experience. Commander Chen rushed to steady them, her face a mix of concern and amazement. "Status report," she barked into her communicator. "The rogue progenitor forces are in disarray, Commander." Marcus Steele's voice crackled through. "And we've got company. Allied progenitor ships just dropped out of warp. They're responding to Zara's distress call." The tide of battle shifted dramatically. Caught between the defenders of the outpost and the newly arrived progenitor reinforcements, the rogue forces quickly found themselves outmatched. Within minutes, the remaining enemy ships powered down their weapons and signaled their surrender. As the immediate threat subsided, the expedition team regrouped in the outpost's main chamber. Commander Chen, Ambassador Kira, and Zara huddled together, discussing the path forward in urgent tones. "We need to establish a permanent presence here," Kira argued. "This outpost is too valuable to abandon." Zara nodded in agreement. "My people are willing to share our knowledge and technology. We can create a joint research station dedicated to guiding the evolution of both humans and Bajorans. Commander Chen considered this for a moment before nodding. Agreed, but we'll need to proceed carefully. The implications of this discovery are staggering. Across the room, Dr. Tilar worked feverishly at a console, her fingers flying over the alien interface. Jake Hawkins and the other evolutionaries gathered around her, offering insights and suggestions. I believe I've found a way to refine the mutation stabilization device, Tilar announced. With these modifications, we can allow for controlled, gradual evolution among volunteers. It should mitigate the risks we've seen with rapid, uncontrolled changes. Jake nodded, a look of relief washing over his face. That's incredible, Doctor. This could change everything. As the various groups continued their discussions, Billy and Karina stood apart, their bodies still adjusting to their transformed state. They watched the proceedings with a mixture of awe and trepidation. What do we do now? Karina asked softly, her hand finding Billy's. Billy squeezed her hand gently. I think we need to stay here. We're the first successful human Bajoran hybrids. Our experience could be invaluable to the research efforts. Karina nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. I was hoping you'd say that. It feels right, doesn't it? Like this is where we're meant to be. Their conversation was interrupted as Marcus Steele approached, his expression thoughtful. Commander Chen is organizing a team to return to Earth with news of our discoveries. I volunteered to go back as an ambassador for the hybrid program. Billy raised an eyebrow. You're leaving? Marcus nodded. Someone needs to help ease fears back home, bridge the gap between the mutated and non-mutated populations. I figure my experiences here make me a good candidate. As they discussed the implications of Marcus's decision, Commander Chen called for everyone's attention. The room fell silent as she addressed the gathered expedition members and their new allies. What we've accomplished here today marks the beginning of a new era for both humanity and the Bajoran people, Chen began, her voice steady and clear. The path ahead of us is uncertain, but full of potential. We have the opportunity to shape the future of our species, to reach for the stars in ways we never thought possible. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. The USS Horizon will depart for Earth within the hour. We'll carry with us the news of our discoveries and the promise of this new future. For those staying behind, your work here will be crucial in the months and years to come. As Chen continued outlining the immediate plans for the outpost and the return journey, Billy and Karina exchanged a look. Their bodies glowed softly with bioluminescent energy, a visible reminder of their transformation and the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. Outside the main chamber, through the outpost's transparent dome, the vastness of space stretched out before them. Stars twinkled in the distance, each one a potential destination for the new human Bajoran civilization that was about to emerge. The future, with all its challenges and opportunities, awaited them.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.